Teachers ever did what the worst thing that happened on a school trip? Not a teacher, but in 4th grade a turkey flew through the windshield of the bus. We were driving through the middle of nowhere on our way to a farm or something. Don't remember what it was supposed to be because we just ended up going back to the school. Some teachers near the front were picking glass out of their forehead. Think the driver was mostly okay but still needed to get checked out. I don't think any of us kids were hurt at all. Maybe we were too short at that age for the glass to make its way over the seats enough to actually maim anyone? I have no idea. But yeah, a teacher kicked the dead bird off the bus, did a quick head count, fluttered over the bus driver, and then we just lined up against a wooden fence at the edge of someone's property while waiting for another bus to come get us. Lots of crazy crap went down at my school throughout my entire 12 years, but I think this is the only thing that happened on a trip. Oh, besides a couple of guys popping some sort of pills while at a Rangers game at the end of the year in 7th grade. They started the next school year in what's basically a pre-juvie kind of setting. That was wild, mostly because I didn't expect these particular guys to do that sort of thing, especially at that age. I wasn't a teacher but I was a junior counselor at a summer day camp, which basically meant I was still a kid myself at the upper age limit for the camp, 13. And L attended for free in exchange for helping the real counselors with the younger kids. Mostly we did nothing and had no real authority, but when it came time for the big summer trip to an amusement park suddenly me and another junior counselor were saddled with watching a group of 8 kids for the day with no adult. Everything went better than expected until the end of the day when we were trying to corral our group to leave. They didn't want to go so they jumped in line for this sightseeing ride and got on before we could stop them. It was basically a slowly rotating observation room that went up a tall tower, stopped a while, then came back down. It got stuck halfway back down while we were frantically trying to find a real adult to let them know what happened. This was before cell phones were common, so I waited at the ride while my co-junior counselor went to find someone from our group. It kept us from leaving for an additional half hour to an hour while they got it unstuck. The counselors got in trouble for letting 2 13-year-olds escort a group alone, and I stopped going to the camp a week later because the other counselors started bullying me in retaliation. Most humans suck. You don't. Keep that crap up. Not a teacher but I witnessed the worst things kids could do during a school trip. My classmates and I were chill people. We didn't cause that much trouble. The worst things we could do were smoking a few joints and drinking some alcohol. Nobody got hurt and teachers actually loved taking our class out for trips. During one trip we were not the only students in the hotel. There was another group of younger students from a different city. We didn't even try to socialize with them because they were too loud and obnoxious. During the first night they literally destroyed the hotel. They broke a few doors and windows, smoked in the room setting all the alarms off, went in an authorized personnel only area of the hotel setting an even louder alarm off and took hard drugs. The morning after we saw their teachers in the hall and they were trying to blame our class for all the damage. That was around 30,000 euros if I remember correctly, but the security cameras proved that we were innocent. They were kicked out of the hotel immediately after that and I still have no idea why nobody called the police since there was a lot of footage showing 14-year-old kids doing C in the hallways. 14-year-old kids doing C in the hallways. Excuse me, what? At an apple orchard with young preschoolers, one kid, who was always an issue in some way or another, crapped his pants fully and didn't say anything. I just happened to pass him and smelled it. There were no restrooms, just a porta potty. Had to stand him on the edge and try and get as much as the flattened turd out of his pants because there was no way he was going to sit in crap-filled pants for the 30 minutes drive back. I was gagging and the kid was doing everything but following my directions. At one point I thought he was going to fall into the hole. It was awful. When I was a kid, our bus broke down outside Baltimore and we were there for like 3 hours. Okay, so not a teacher, but one time on a trip to the movies in 8th grade, one of the chaperones was my English teacher, who was deathly allergic to citrus. I think we know where this is going. On the bus ride back to school, a kid takes an orange, peels it and throws it at her. Hard enough to the point where orange juice got all over her shirt. Not sure if it was revenge related or just being a dong. Anyway, she immediately starts having an allergic reaction and we have to pull over on the side of the highway and wait for an ambulance. We go back to school and the day is over. The school sends out an email basically saying please don't attempt to kill your teachers with allergic reactions and that she will be fine. Although, we had a substitute for 4 days and the kid got expelled. TLDR. Kid almost kills teacher with citrus allergy on the bus. Gets expelled. Pleased to hear he got expelled. I had a field trip to a local forest preserve with my 3rd grade class. I had a boy with high functioning special needs on the trip who was also a flight risk. Full 1-to-1 aid for him. Well, it had been a crazy month of rain and storms leading up to the field trip and the river that ran through the forest preserve was flooded. It was hot and muggy so I was in a pair of Nikes, shorts and a t-shirt. We are looking at the river, but we aren't allowed to go on the bridge as water is touching the bottom of the walkway. Now I've been to this particular forest preserve hundreds of times since I was a kid. I know all the trails and paths, where poison ivy and oak tend to grow, and where the best parts to see some native wildlife are. Well, my flight risk keeps talking about seeing the river, starting to get upset that he can't go on the bridge to get close. In my 27 years of visiting this forest preserve I have never seen white caps on this river. There were visual rapids. Lo and behold, the flight risk darts down the road back towards where the bus was. His payra at the time isn't exactly physically fit, so I told her to stay with my class with the parent chaperones and I take off after him. He ducks into the woods and I'm probably 250 feet away. He's wearing camouflage, because it's time to go to the woods. My dad always wears camo in the woods so, as we get into the denser parts of the forest, I'm relying a lot on sound to keep after him. Eventually we break back towards the main road, and I'm about 100 feet behind him at this point. Well, goes across the main road and down the river bank, right towards the rapids. Worst case scenario, I'm a strong swimmer, but I know that floodwaters are nothing to frick with. I know this kid has no chance if he gets in the water. He'll get caught on something and drown. As I get across the road and start sliding down the bank as fast as I can, I see him sitting, taking off his socks and shoes. Thank God for swimming etiquette. I quickly grab onto him, throw him over my shoulders, grab his shoes and walk him back up the steep and slippery bank. He gets put onto the bus with his aide now locking him into the seat while I'm on the phone with the principal. He says he's on his way to drive him back to school. He starts complaining that he's got a rash. He's gone through tons of poison ivy and oak. Luckily, I don't have a reaction to it. So in a way, he got a lesson for what he did. Heck of a story. 5th grade field trip to a zoo. During a tour of the primate exhibits, a notoriously ill-behaved student hurls a stick down into the gorilla habitat and lands near an adult gorilla. Without hesitation, the now angry gorilla arms himself with the same stick and sends it back like a tomahawk to the boy with terrifying velocity and wildly impressive precision. The stick shatters around the boy's face and he goes down. Commotion ensues. More gorillas make an appearance and begin to scream at the group of horrified children. Zoo staff start piling in out of the woodwork to see what's going on. The orangutans on the other side of the trail have now got wind of the situation and have begun mobilizing to assist their gorilla comrades. It's a war on two fronts now. Gorilla and orangutans launch volleys of fesses and students scatter. Throughout the entire exhibit all manner of primates begin their intimidating chatter and howling. An army of zoo staff has swarmed the primate exhibits and manages to stop War of the Planet of the Apes. 30 minutes later, the zoo has indefinitely banned the school from returning and the boy is on the way to the hospital for 5 stitches in his chin. Winner. Obligatory not a teacher. Years ago my brother went on an exchange program to Germany. It was just for 2 weeks. He stayed with a family over there, while their daughter stayed with us. They swapped bedrooms and classes at school and whatnot. Anyways, it was only the 2nd or 3rd day over there. My little brother and all the other Canadian kids were on a short day trip to Cologne. Immediately after getting off the bus one of the kids went, "Hey guys, look at this." He made a Nazi salute, held his finger over his upper lip, and started marching in circles. My brother said their German teacher immediately yanked him aside and he was sent back on the bus back to the high school while the rest continued with their field trip in Cologne. For those of you who don't know, it's considered a huge faux pas to make any sort of joke about Hitler or the Holocaust over there, even punishable by being charged a fine in some areas. Apparently the kid mouthed off the teacher when confronted about his behavior later instead of apologizing. He bitched about being yanked by the arm back on the bus too roughly, and wouldn't admit he made any mistake or did anything wrong. He was sent back home. His parents were not refunded for the trip. My brother says his German exchange partner ended up moving to one of our teachers' homes for the rest of the exchange program as part of his punishment. He wasn't allowed to take any part in the exchange. He wasn't even allowed to host a German student at his house after that. As many have pointed out, it happens to be very illegal across all of Germany to make the Nazi salute in public, jokingly or otherwise. I remember a story of my former religious education teacher. Don't know if it's the worst, but definitely funny. She, naively, went on a trip to Amsterdam with the graduation class. They told her it was because of the Anne Frank Museum and she believed it, which is pretty cute. The hotel, especially stairs and elevator, was plastered with the end of joints. Well, the two teachers spent their evenings with the attempt to kick the ends into the gap between elevator and door so the students at least wouldn't try to smoke that. The two teachers spent their evenings with the attempt to kick the ends into the gap between elevator and door. The funny part is they apparently couldn't just pick them up and throw them away. Not a teacher but a ski instructor. Many of my younger students will come from public schools on field trips. My boss always says get them away from the bunny hill, the easiest hill to go on the chairlift, so the parents teachers don't see them fall. My worst story was when I had a group on the younger side, 6 to 10. The youngest girl had a panic attack on the chairlift. Luckily I was able to get her to calm down till the top of the hill. By the time we finally got to the top of the chairlift she had already wet herself. So I had to get her and the rest of the group down to chalet and find my boss with an army of children. I could not tell them to resin we were going back because it could hurt her feelings. Mind you, she was crying the whole time. It took 30 minutes to get down the hill since none of the kids had skied before and my junior ski instructor did jack shit. I would have sent him down the hill with her, but he did not listen to a word I told him and I didn't want a missing child case. Full stop. All the other kids were complaining that they have to go back and stop skiing. And trust me, there is nothing more fun than explaining to your boss that there was an issue like that. Not a teacher but I was a student. We went out ice skating. A 190-pound guy I sorta knew. He was in one of my classes. Didn't like him but I was too nice to tell him off. Was having trouble staying up and I was the closest person to him, so he grabbed me and used me for stability. Only problem was he was putting all his weight on me and ended up pushing me down. Then because I was what was keeping him up, he fell and in the process stepped on top of my fingers and sliced 4 of them open. I really despise that guy. I'm okay but I still have the scars and a story to tell. Was on a week-long camp. About 80% of the students got really sick. Throwing up, fevers, diarrhea, the works. I remember trying to sleep and every 30 minutes or so a new student would knock on my cabin door asking for more medication or another sick bag. These were 7th grade students and this was the longest they had been away from home. We went to Parliament House and literally had students sleeping and throwing up in little back rooms whilst a few healthy not as sick students completed the tour. A similar thing happened to the year level below me when I was at school. Everyone had to go home. It was extra sad because that was one of the best camps. When I was in the 2nd grade we took a field trip to the forest preserve. For me it was an awesome field trip. Being led by a guide through this cool hiking trail and learning things about nature was my kind of thing. About halfway through the hike a few of us decide to take the fun way across a thick log over a little creek. This kid named Marcello was in front of me and he was goofing off a bit too much and slipped. He fell into the creek, but in the process smacked his face into the log. We helped get him out of the water and noticed that his mouth was bleeding profusely. When he smacked his face on that log he got a stick about 2 inches long jammed up into his gums. It was pretty dang gnarly and the park ranger that was leading the hike called for an ambulance. I work with 18-21-year-old students with disabilities. We took the students on our annual canoe trip at the end of the year. It's typically like a 2-hour canoe ride through a chain of lakes and this particular year didn't go so well. One of the students was aggressively yelling at other students to paddle harder. Another student got annoyed and turned around and started beating this student with his paddle. We had to get all the canoes. There were probably 7 of them to shore to get these 2 students out because they were bludgeoning one another. Well, camp counselor story kind of adjacent in that parents put all their trust in camps and their employees to care for their kids. Anyway, camp contracted with outside rafting company for teen campers to do a rafting trip. One of their 20-something guides thought it would be awesome to sleep with a 14-year-old girl on said trip. I just remember the dark winds of shame that descended over the whole camp after they all got back. Police interviews. The girl's solemn parents walking through to get to the offices. The camp director, who was not on the trip but was, having to step down and leave at night after campers had gone to sleep. Our bus driver stopped on train tracks as a train was coming. Our bus full of first graders was approaching train tracks as the lights flashed and the gate started to lower. Our driver decided not to stop at the tracks, like any bus should by law, and thought maybe she could beat the lowering arms. She realized she couldn't and braked on the track, the first of 2. The gate arms slammed onto our bus, and a man stopped at a red light got out of his car to lift it off my side of the bus. I panicked from the front seat as the incoming train whistled, and the parent chaperones and I screamed at her to move back. She kept saying I can't go in reverse. She had no panic in her voice at all. Thankfully the train came on the second track. I can't remember if she actually backed up or not. I was absolutely traumatized and spent the beginning of the trip on the phone with transportation. They sent us another driver for the way home, and our original driver sat awkwardly in the front seat. We take the same trip every year, and every year I cringe when we cross the tracks. Oh god, I'd say that gave you nightmares. It was my own Europe trip in high school. London, Paris, Brussels, Amsterdam. 1. First night in London, witnessing someone get their face slashed open by a broken bottle in a fight in Trafalgar Square. 2. Second day in London, encountering a dead body homeless person in Piccadilly Circus. 3. First night in Paris. Our hostel was rather close to the red light district, and as we walked past a strip club the bouncer outside grabbed a friend's arm and tried to yank her inside. 4. Second day in Paris. Some kids were begging in front of the Paris Opera House, and when one guy wouldn't give a kid money, the kid punched the guy in the face and broke his nose. 5. Some of the kids went into a coffee shop in Amsterdam, because we were allowed to wander by ourselves in each city, and when we landed in Atlanta the drug dogs alerted because the kids had traces of pot on the soles of their shoes. 6. In the Atlanta airport waiting for our flight to our home city, the lead teacher fell and broke her arm and busted up her face pretty badly, so when we got off the plane in our hometown, the parents were horrified to see our teacher being pushed down the concourse in a wheelchair, looking quite worse for wear. This needs to be a movie. Not a teacher, but years ago, the grade above me was touring Texas for a field trip, about a week long, and they all rode in one van. Anyways, their bus was robbed while they were touring the Alamo. Now again, this was like a week-long trip around Texas. Since they had no extra clothes and like 4 or 5 days left on their trip, they had to all go buy clothes and other necessities from Walmart. Then the next year the bus they were on caught on fire. Guess they really had bad luck with field trips. They just graduated high school today. I'm not a teacher, but I'm currently a student in Australia. My high school is a very well-off private high school, and so in year 10, sophomore year, the school sends the entire year on various overseas tours to different countries in Southeast Asia and Central Australia. I went to Thailand, but one of my friends went to Cambodia. When they were leaving to go to the airport to head home, he went to the toilet before leaving the hotel. Anyway, the teachers and all the students forgot about him and left before he came back. He was gone for like 3 minutes. So they all left for the airport, and now my friend is stuck in a hotel in country where he does not speak the language. Well, instead of panic he manages to get himself a tuk-tuk. I think that's how you spell it, and manages to find his own way to the airport. In the meantime the teachers and all the students only realize he is missing when they are 3/4 of the way to the airport. They went in 2 separate groups and each group thought he was with the other group. When they do figure it out, everyone is freaking the frick out. Once they arrive at the airport, however, who do they find waiting for them but my friend? Not only did he figure out a way to get to the airport on his own, but he managed to beat them there by like 10 to 20 minutes. This all happened almost exactly 2 years ago. Another story from a different high school in my area. This school has an annual trip to Thailand for the same reason my school does, except they do it in year 9, freshman year, and only have Thailand as an option. While on the trip, a bunch of girls decided to sneak out at night and get tattoos. Needless to say, they were caught and were immediately sent home. I'd also like to note this happened many years ago, and that the high school involved is a fantastic high school, and these were just a small group of unusually stupid people. That high school is awesome, and if I were not at my school I'd be going there. Several years ago, my school decided to book a roller skating rink for a couple hours for an end of year trip. It was closed to the public. One student was both academically and behaviorally ineligible to go on the trip. Mom had other plans. She kept him home and simply drove him to the rink. After the field trip, kids went inside. She walked her kid over and attempted to buy a ticket. The ticket window wasn't even open, so she just brought him in. A teacher saw this and notified a staff member that the kid wasn't supposed to be there. The 20-something manager told mom to take her kid and leave. Mom lost her crap. She tried to slap the manager, then her kid's homeroom teacher. Lots of F-bombs and "I'll burn this shithole to the ground" ensued. Police were contacted, and her son had the pleasant experience of watching his mom get cuffed and stuffed in front of the entire 7th grade. Can't imagine why the kid had behavior problems. Not a teacher but the student. I knew I wasn't popular. I got assigned to a hotel room with 3 other girls who were very vocal about their promiscuity. Fine, whatever. Then they told me none of them wanted to share a bed with me, so they were forcing me to sleep on the floor. Then they started throwing things on me while I was trying to sleep. Everything from toenail clippings to pieces of luggage. Then one by one they all called their boyfriends in the next room over and proceeded to talk dirty on speakerphone. When I asked them if they could be a little quieter, they told me to shut up and made me move to the room's entrance. Then they refused to let me use the bathroom in the morning. God, I hated high school. I'm not a teacher, but there are lots of things that happened on the 8th grade trip to DC. My friends and I almost got lost because everyone was in front of us, and we got stopped because of a guy directing traffic. He let the cars go for maybe up to 3 minutes, despite seeing nervous 13 and 14-year-olds almost getting lost. Another time, there was a woman yelling at a cop right next to the bus. Another time, we were leaving an ice cream place to get on the bus. There was so much traffic and we were just waiting for 1 to 2 hours. It was so bad that people were recording it because it was usually never that bad. The tour guide literally had to get out of the car and yell at people in cars and direct traffic. Another time we couldn't go to Arlington Cemetery for a while because a bag was left there, and everyone had to evacuate because it was suspicious. Since that was delayed, we went to the 9/11 memorial. When we were just about to leave the memorial, the police told us to stay there because there was more suspicious activity or something. I was on the verge of having panic attacks many times, but thank God they never turned into actual panic attacks. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.